Hey guys! Today I'd like to talk about a concept that exists in Japanese society: peer pressure. The Japanese are well known as rule-abiding people. This is something that anyone who has traveled to Japan would probably agree with. Many Japanese people stand in line for the train. I have heard that some people interrupt the line, but I have never seen anyone interrupt it. They are also very punctual. As students, they were warned a lot if they were late, and perhaps because of this, many people are careful not to be late even after they become adults. Of course, this is true for people in other countries, but in Japan, the penalties for being late seems to be particularly severe. In Japan, obeying rules and manners has a very high value. This Japanese propensity to observe good manners had also come in handy in 2020. In April of last year, the government announced a state of emergency. The declaration allowed the prefectural governments of the affected areas to request residents to refrain from going out, except when necessary to maintain their livelihood, and cooperate to prevent infection. This declaration is similar to the overseas lockdown, but with one difference. In contrast to the lockdown, which imposes penalties on violators, the emergency declaration only allows the national and prefectural governments to ask residents for their cooperation. Those who violate it will not be legally charged with a crime. In the restaurant industry, measures are taken to publicize restaurant names that did not follow their promises, but no individual was arrested for going out unnecessarily. However, thanks to this request, the number of new infections gradually decreased. The number of new diseases per day was over 500 at the beginning of April, but it was about 25 by the middle of May. It is a characteristic of the Japanese people that even if there are no penalties, if the governor or the prime minister makes a strong request, they will follow it and cooperate. However, this Japanese tendency to follow manners and rules can also have negative consequences. In the corona disaster, the term peer pressure became a hot topic. Let's take a look at the damage caused by peer pressure in Japan. I mentioned earlier that Japanese people strictly observe manners, but this does not mean that we are ethically superior. There are many cases where we reluctantly follow the rules and regulations set by society because we are concerned about what others think about themselves. Some manners that are believed to be right in the community are not always rational. For example, there are priority seats on Japanese trains where the elderly, injured, and pregnant women are given priority. However, these seats are not only for those people. As long as there are no damaged or elderly people around, it is okay for healthy people to sit there. Nevertheless, there are cases where young people are warned just for sitting there. However, some of them don't look sick but actually are. In one case, A young man sitting in a priority seat was warned, only to find out that he had broken his leg, which embarrassed the person who warned him. The disadvantage of being too mannerly also occur outside of the train. The most famous of these is overtime work. Overtime has become synonymous with the Japanese work environment, and it is also related to peer pressures. By law, workers in a typical company are allowed to go home at 5 p.m. However, when they try to go home on time, they are reprimanded by their bosses. They say, it's not fair for you to go home when everyone else is working so hard. Legally, it is okay to go home early, and in fact, going home on time will refresh your mind and increase your productivity. However, in a typical company in our country, there is a tendency that it is not suitable for one person to leave work early while others are working. In this way, Japanese people may hesitate to act in a manner that is not inherently problematic if the people around them judge it to be wrong. On the other hand, there are cases where people blame others more than necessary because it is the rule. As with the priority seats mentioned earlier, the current pandemic has brought this characteristic to the fore more prominently. When the first state of emergency was declared, people harmed those who went out, looked at their personal information, and revealed it without their permission. They were called self-restrained police, but they were not official police officers or government officials. They gave private punishments based on their own justice to those judged to have gone out unnecessarily. Some of the personal penalties were objectively excessive. Indeed, people should not go out unnecessarily at this time. But how about hanging people who do so without permissions? Incidentally, people who go to the entertainment district, for example, do not necessarily went there for entertainment. Some people went there because they needed to. However, the self-restrained police did not care and attacked those who went there. Sometimes, white and black people living in Japan point out that locals stare at them in Japan. But it's not because they are unusual in appearance that people stare at them. Their behavior is sometimes different from the common sense of Japanese people. Some of us stare with an unpleasant expression on our face or cough in annoyance at people we judge to be doing something wrong. In many cases, they don't warn them by using words. They only threaten them by glaring or coughing. They do this not only to foreigners, but also to the Japanese people. However, if you are not familiar with Japanese culture, you will not know what is wrong with you. Therefore, some foreign people may think that they are offended just because they do not look Japanese. But in reality, their actions may be considered harmful. Most of the time, they don't explicitly tell you what kind of behavior is against etiquette in our country. The Japanese people around them just stare at them in annoyance. It's no wonder that foreigners feel discriminated against. This unique peer pressure that the rest of the world does not share may defame Japanese people. Even though Japan has fallen from being an economic superpower, it is still one of the world's most abundant countries. There is plenty of entertainment. Freedom of speech is also guaranteed. However, there are more suicides in Japan than in other countries. I believe that this is due to the peer pressure of Japanese society. This unseen pressure plays a significant role in helping the Japanese people maintain their manners, but it is also one factor that makes our lives difficult. For the betterment of this country, I would like to reduce the impact of this pressure. That's all for this video today. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Bye.